Júnior manda direto, gol!
Welcome to another episode of LFM TV. Today we have a special guest that is representing a movie from Brazil. Hello, Luis.
Hello.
How you doing?
Yeah, very well. Nice to meet you. Thank you for coming to an interview.
And you're not from Brazil, right? And how did you get involved in this project?
Yeah, sure. So I'd been working as a TV director and a TV producer, and two friends of mine took me for a drink out in London one night and said, "Have you heard this incredible story about Carlos Henrique Raposo?" And I was like, "No, I've never heard of it." And they said, "Well, he'd done all this stuff, and he would do anything not to play." I said, "Wow, that's amazing. That sounds like Catch Me If You Can. That's something you should yeah, it'd be really cool to do something like that." I was like, "Yeah, well, we want to make a movie on it." I was like, "Okay." And they was like, "Well, do you want to do it?" I was like, "Yeah, let's go." And I knew the BBC South American correspondent, a guy called Tim Vickery. He does a lot of football reporting across all of South America, lives in Rio. Knew him pretty well, and he just happened to be in London that week. So I was like, "Okay, Tim, let's meet up."
Perfect.
And met up with him, and he said, "Look, it's my holiday. Why have you got me? Why have you got me working on my holiday? What's wrong? What do you want?" I said, "Well, tell us everything you need to know about Carlos Henrique Raposo, the Kaiser." And he said, "Nah." A big smile came up on his face. He said, "In 21 years of living in Rio de Janeiro, it's not only the best story in football I've heard, it's the best story in Brazil that I've heard. Someone should make a movie on it." So we decided to go. We just went and found him, and then carried on this crazy journey over the past 3 years of meeting everyone from bicheiros to really famous footballers to restaurateurs to chief of polices, and everyone knew Carlos Kaiser in Rio, and everyone had a story to tell about him. So yeah, and then we had to make this thing, and here we have the result.
Wow. And how was the process for you as a director? Did you bring did you already have a structure of how did you wanted to shoot it? Or like by, let's say, to go to restaurants or to meet people that are his fans? Like, how was the process for you as a director previously to go into Brazil?
Yeah, so I've done a few TV documentaries and then moved off into advertising directing. And with the TV documentary, you kind of know the stories, and you know that things happened, and so you kind of plan your documentary out and say, right, okay, well, we need this person to say X and this person to say Y, and we're going to have an arc, and it's kind of going to end up here. And this wasn't the case with this film. This was a case of, right, we need to find him. So we found him, and then it was, okay, we need to get him signed up and all the rest of it, and then we need his interview, and then we need to meet people, right? We need to find people to meet. And on every day, we just kind of didn't know where we were going to end up. It was a case of phone calls, and then people telling other people that this was happening, and then some people really wanted to do it and tell their story about Kaiser, and then other people were like, "I'm not talking about that subject and that part of my life." And so you'd have to convince them and show them it's good and all the rest of it. And so we didn't have a structure. We knew that Kaiser's story had charmed a lot of people. Obviously, he'd lived this career as a fake footballer, and it was a case of trying to find out what could or could not be the truth. And we still don't really know, to be honest. And that's the beauty of the story. It's the uncertainty, and I think, certainly the footballers in Rio de Janeiro loved hearing his stories and loved repeating them. And that was great to find out. I mean, in terms of the structure and how it's ended up, I don't think anyone could have predicted what we got. And that's, partly luck, but then partly also once you've been told the same stories but in different times and information doesn't quite all add up, you're trying to work out some resemblance of the truth, and you end up with that because you put in that hard work, and then also you as a director and the producers of the film, everyone just bought into Brazil, learned language, started reading all the cultural stuff and living it and experiencing it, and I hope that comes across in the film.
Nice. So basically, you think that everything was done like in post after you saw all the footage, that's how you was able to do the structure of the movie?
So no, we did several trips to Rio. So we're obviously based in London, and the first trip was very much about like getting a concept together and saying, right, is this true? You know, who can we get? And then we got Carlos Alberto Torres on this trip, was massive, you know, and Gonçalves as well. So some big name footballers confirming that he'd been at these clubs and confirming the characters and telling us these stories. And you're thinking, this is great, you know, so we've got something here. And then the second trip, you're going to get some more stories, and we have Bebeto this trip, and a master, like a proper master interview with Kaiser, and some various other parts of the story that you build in. But we started to know that we needed something to a narrative at that point, and then on the third trip, we get the reveal of what other people are saying, and then from that point, I knew exactly what we were going to do, and I think it's really important that you present the story from Kaiser's viewpoint, you know, and this is Kaiser's world. And then we had a bit of alternative reality to show, and I think that's where we wanted to get to. And you want to build into this character, really get into him, and then sort of strip it back a little bit, and then people judge what they want from it, you know.
How was the selection for getting the B-roll and all that great footage about him when he was younger?
Well, in some ways very easy, in some ways very hard. So I used to work in sports broadcasting and worked in football in the United Kingdom and at the BBC, and I knew that instantly that from the 1980s and 1990s, there might be a big match that is kept in its entirety, but everything else was either not recorded or just the important bits of the goals. And of course, he never played, right? So you're then, you're saying, right, well, are we actually ever going to see him on the pitch? Because stadiums in Brazil and America are huge, right? They're going to keep the whole game for certain bits, or they're going to keep like little bits of it. And then are they really going to cut away to a guy that's never played football and was hiding in plain sight? Probably not. But the good thing is about Brazil is at the time they were very hot at making entertainment pieces around football. So global TV, these guys were like soap stars, So there was always something on Renato Gaucho and Bebeto and Romario, and Kaiser would pop up occasionally in one of those, as part of their parties. So you kind of knew that there was going to be something there. And Kaiser had obviously kept his appearances on TV, and there was loads that we didn't put in from his appearances because once we'd shown a bit of it, it was kind of, only so many times you need to show this. But he did, and then he obviously went on to do presenting his own football show. So, this is, you think about this, right? Not any of you sort of conned your way into a football career and doing all this. You then present your own football show as a footballer interviewing other footballers. With Jairzinho and Carlos Alberto and Renato Gaucho. It's crazy, right? Like it's the most extravagant thing. So that was great. But then also, some of the stories that, Kaiser has a lot of famous stories, which, there's a fight that happens at Bangor with Custodio and Jaraji. And, we knew that was a friendly game. And so that was never going to be recorded. So the footage was never going to be there. So we had to shoot it ourselves and do some recreations to bring it to life, and I hope that comes across very well in the film.
Nice. What did you enjoy the most?
From the whole process, falling in love with Brazil and being part of Rio life, which it's a crazy place, very brash, beautiful, quite easygoing, but quite stressful at the same time. So that as a filmmaker, I think it's always wonderful to really get into the culture of someone, really understand what it means to be someone from that place, and that's so important, so important. Otherwise, you can't tell the story. You can't go there and say, well, this couldn't happen in England, and put that view on it. You have to get into that psychology of it. But then also, I think it's a discovery of really intriguing, exciting stories and backstories from a culture that's not your own. And you know, Rio, I mean, I think all of Latin America has this, right? And I think it's been fabulous the last sort of 4 or 5 years, the amount of great stuff that's now becoming more mainstream Western viewed, right? So you know, Narcos and El Chapo, and there was a 3% drama on Netflix, and I think that's great because I think, you know, from a Western point of view, you don't see these stories. You don't hear the stuff that goes on in South America, and I think there's some of the most culturally brilliant stuff happens there, and so many stories to discover. So for me, discovering Castle de Andrade, discovering Jogo do Bicho, discovering like some of the mad TV that happened in Brazil at that time. You know, I watched soap operas from there, and you're thinking, wow, this is crazy, and it's great. It's lovely to find something that is so different from what you're used to. So all of that together, I think, was the thing I enjoyed the most.
Well, thank you so much for sharing how was the process of shooting the documentary and all that. And thank you also for, you know, falling in love with Brazil and tell this story. There's anything else that you would like to say to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, obviously if you get a chance to watch the film, and I hope you enjoy it, but I hope that, you know, as a foreigner making this film, I hope that it, it, it's strange, right? So when you're presenting it to a Western audience, they don't see the subtext of, you know, Kaiser is a Malandro figure, he's a 171. And, you know, for me, quite a lot of this film is sort of saying, well, what are the good and the bad points about being that character, and why does that character have to exist? And I think people will take from it what they want. You know, personally, for me, I think, you know, I think it should be celebrated a little more. I don't think it's as bad as people think, but I can also see the other side. So I hope people enjoy discussing that.
There is any website or like a Facebook page that people can know more about it?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to @KaiserFilm on Twitter, it'll be there, and it's same on Facebook for Kaiser Film as well. And if you just Google it, we have a mini site that's just gone live this morning. So just put in the film title name, and then yeah, go from there.
In terms of working with your team, do you always keep working with the same people or do you change?
I try and work with a select few people.
For example, DP
Yeah,
or
yeah.
audio?
Yeah, exactly. So I'd like, you know, you'd always like to work with the same people, but I think it's good to change it up. But there is a standard that you have. So, you know, the films that this one and the next few we've got coming up, you know, people always seem to be quite impressed with how well it looks and all the rest of it. So you always try and employ better than you can do yourself. And get, you know, obviously people, you know, it's a freelance industry, people aren't available at certain times, so you have to have people that slot in, but you need to keep that group small. You can't just start keeping loads of other people in. But also in terms of crew, what's really important to me, especially in a documentary, is that you need to be able to discuss with them the story, especially when you're finding out on the go. You need to have the alternate viewpoints in there. And, you know, it's a team thing. It really is a team thing.
And in terms of selecting the shots, is it a little bit open or you already have in mind how do you want to shoot it? For example, if it's like interviews.
Yeah, so with interviews, I mean, we always try to make it as beautiful as possible. I think in Rio it's quite hard because people are sort of saying, right, I can meet you in an hour here, and you go and it's like a really bad office. Oh, I'm going to make this look good. So you know, you tended to have two cameras on the subject so that you could cut around it. We always knew with Kaiser that it was going to have some dramatic elements in there and some archives, so we knew that it would feel fresh anyway. But you know, we always knew, for instance, that we were going to shoot scope and have it 239, and we wanted to have that filmic look. And it needed to be a colourful thing. It's got to be really vibrant, quite saturated. So, you know, we had all that in mind when we were doing each shot, and we knew that there was no point in setting a style. Like, you know, so you see a lot of documentaries that have the same backdrop or, you know, have the same sort of lighting style. We knew that was, you had to throw that out the window. in Rio. But then also Rio's this amazing city where you can always find a view somewhere, especially if you're outside. So, you know, the variety was always good for this. It's a tricky one because I think the whole process of doing this is, you know, tough. It's financially can be challenging at times, but I think you have to have you got to look at it from several different aspects. I think the most important thing is you've got to do something that you love. If you're going to do a film or a documentary, do something you absolutely love and believe in, and then get advice from other people. And if you get enough people saying that sounds like a really good idea, and open that pool wide, right? So don't just ask your friends who are likely to say, oh yeah, go for it, and your parents, you know, get some structured advice, and then go for it, you know, and sink yourself into it, and also just remember that, you know, filmmaking in itself is a long process, from getting something to start to getting it to greenlit, to then getting it to a festival is great. Then you got to get it distributed, and you know it could be, you know, it will happen a lot longer than you think it will, and that's no bad thing. And going through that whole process is important, I think, because it allows you to realize quite a lot of things about the filmmaking process, and realize that, you know, you don't want to get too up or too down with, you know, great bit of news comes in, fantastic, we're up, everything's going to be great, and then like a few weeks later nothing's happened and you're feeling knocked down again. You know, you need to keep central affairs and trying to keep emotionally detached from the process, and I think that's important.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure.
Eu entrei nesse documentário para ser sincero.
O Júnior manda direto.
O futebol brasileiro é aquele futebol arte. Tecnicamente é fantástico.
Pelé dominou, Carlos Alberto Salive correu, caminho, atirou, gol!
Nós temos aí grandes exemplos, né, de jogadores excepcionais. Diariamente, vamos dizer assim, apareceu uma pessoa como o Kaiser.
O Kaiser é uma das figuras mais emblemáticas do futebol mundial. Ele era único só. A bola.
Acho que é o único cidadão do planeta que, durante 26 anos, jogou futebol sem colocar uma chuteira no pé.
Essa história de um não jogador de futebol, não joguei, não fiz um gol, não dei um chute.
Ele deu 2 piques e sentiu aí. Botou a mão na perna, pediu pra sair.
Há festas, como o primeiro-ministro italiano lá, com muitas orgias.
O Carlos Kaiser é jogador de futebol.
Aí tô vendo na televisão, o Kaiser tal, nova contratação depois. Ah, não acredito que ele tá em outro clube lá.
Tu vê a pessoa dar uma volta no mais perigoso do Brasil.
O divertimento é sexo, é uma doença, como Michael Douglas dizem que tem.
Ele foi o maior jogador de futebol, nunca teve jogado futebol. Imbatível.